The content of this presentation applies to the Milestone 7 pre-release of Design Management version 4 and is subject to change in future versions. Hi, this is Wayne Dew, the developer of the validation framework in the Rational Design Management application. In this video, I'm going to show you how you can define validation constraints on models in the Design Management application. I'm going to import a model of a simple reservation system. First, I'll go to Workspace Administration, eCore Import. I click the Add button, then I click the Browse button, and I choose the reservation system from my list. Now I hit Import. And I see that the eCore import completed successfully. From the Designs menu, I go to Explorer, and I can see this model inside the Designs Explorer. Now I'll click on the Class Diagram tab, and we can see the class diagram. Here, the system and user classes extend off the contact number object class. In the property diagram, we can see that the contact number object class contains a property for the contact phone number. Here it is. And this property is inherited by the system and user objects. We want to define some constraints for our models. First, we want the contact number, this, to be in a certain format. We want the maximum number of users, this, to be in a certain range. And we want the custodian to be an administrator. To accomplish this, we'll start off by creating a constraint set. We go into the Designs menu and choose Model Constraint. This model constraint can be thought of as an element which contains a collection of constraints. Some constraints make the most sense when they're applied on properties, like the one to validate the phone number property. These are called property constraints, and we'll add one right now. So I've copied and pasted a regular expression for a phone number. For the message, I will type in must be in the format For the language, I will choose regular expression. Severity will be error, and the description I will leave as property constraint. For the second constraint, which specifies that the maximum number of users must be in a certain range, we are going to define a second property constraint. This one defines the numeric range as being between 1 to 500, and the message will be must be between 1 to 500. The language will be range, and the severity will be error. Now, our third constraint, which specifies that the custodian of a system must be an administrator, for that one we will add a class constraint. We want the context of the constraint to be the class that we are evaluating it on. For this, we are going to write a SPARQL query. I'd like to call your attention to two things in this SPARQL query. First, we use the dmThis variable to refer to the context element. Second, note that we return the variable containing the phone number of the user, and we are going to be substituting this into the error message. I'll copy and paste the Sparkle expression. I'll choose the Sparkle language, and for the message, I will write user must be an administrator. Please call custodian number to confirm. Severity will be error. And now I press OK. Now it is time for us to define the scope of the constraints. In the first property constraint, we choose the context to be the phone contact number. So I will go into the property section, press the Add button, and in this dialog I will choose Contact Number. If I wanted to further restrict to a user class or to the system class, I can choose an additional class scope over here. However, if I don't choose the scope, it will be applied on that property regardless of the class that it is in. For the second property constraint, we are going to choose the context to be the max number of users property. Now for the third constraint, the class constraint, we are going to choose the context to be the class that we want to apply the constraint on, which happens to be the system. So from this list, I choose system. Observe that even though the constraint itself has a system class context, the constraint actually checks a property of the referenced user. And again, I mentioned that dm_this will be substituted with the instance of the system class that is being validated. So now, because we have imported a model in the first step, we are going to create a snapshot from the Workspace Administration menu. And as well, we are going to create a new project area. In part 2 of this series, you will see how these constraints are applied onto models, as well as how to use live constraints.